Tonight's speaker, as I said, has driven here from Tulsa, and I don't have a bio in front of me, and I think she'll tell us a lot more about herself, but she is Dr. Julianne Romanello. She is a PhD. She was a professor at the University of Tulsa, where she began to see things happen at the university that led her into the World Economic Forum, smart cities, comprehensive city plans, 15-minute cities, 20-minute cities. Have you ever heard of this terminology? How about the Chickasha community plan or comprehensive city? Okay, these are things we need to be aware of. These are not good things. They sound good, and she's going to enlighten us and teach us how to identify these things, how to fight these things when she gives her talk tonight, right now. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Julianne Romanello.
Thank you so much. You are welcome. Thank you all so much for having me here. It is always a pleasure. I always start out on a positive note by thanking the good people of Oklahoma for showing up to hear some really uncomfortable information, and too much of it for the short time that we have. I think it's always beautiful to meet the real people who are affected by these policies, who want to understand them, and then to fight them. So thank you for giving your time tonight to this talk. Let me see. I'm always a little bit awkward with technology, so I have to figure out where I am. I have a clicker. You would think that I'd figure this out by now. Uh-oh. Is it gonna work?
Nope, there it is.
There we go. Okay.
Gotta use that mic.
That way.
Really?
This way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I want to hear you.
You can hear me? Let me move this forward a little bit because I tend to look at the screen. It's the teacher in me. There we go. Okay, can everyone hear me very well?
Not very well.
Not very well. If I hold it up like this, is it better?
Yes.
Okay. Just wave at me, because sometimes people always have a hard time hearing me, and sometimes I'll let this fall. So just wave, and I won't be offended if you interrupt me. So as Carrie mentioned, I used to teach at the University of Tulsa. I've taught at several universities and colleges in Oklahoma, and my background is in political philosophy, and I studied things like symbols of order and disorder, and I had no idea that I would end up going on a speaking circuit to the GOP parties and anyone who will listen, talking about the New World Order. But life sometimes throws curveballs at you, and when I was at the University of Tulsa, we had basically a George Kaiser takeover. It was pretty brutal, and the whole story has never really gotten out to the public. It needs to. But I started looking into why are all of these universities turning into parts of the P20 pipeline to the workforce. When we think of a university, usually you think of learning for its own sake, or learning a profession that is valuable in its own right. You don't think of being shipped through a pipeline like a commodity. And my husband works in oil and gas pipelines, so I know about how this works, right? But the university was talking about that, and I thought, I have to understand this language, and why you would make the analogy of students, real human beings, as a commodity to be shipped through a pipeline. And as I started looking through, I just started Googling these buzzwords, and that's going to be important for how you look at your comprehensive plan. So that's why I'm mentioning it. I just Googled reimagining education, or P20 pipeline, or next generation college students. And I found out that every single university is doing the same thing, and it's all tied in with the public schools. And what is it for? It's, in a nutshell, it's for social credit scoring. So then I started to look into other things like city plans and where this was coming from, and then that takes you to the New World Order. So that's where we are right now. That's how I got here. And what we're going to talk about tonight is how comprehensive plans for your city or county or the state, or the region, how these are bringing about the smart city plan, which is a UN global plan to institute social credit scoring. I'm going to talk about it in the terms of impact investing and impact tracking, so it gets pretty dense. And what is wonderful is that Brian Mayberry, who has been so kind to donate his time to make these videos that I post on YouTube, he's here tonight making a video, so if there are things that you need to review, they will be available online, as will the slides. I'll put those online. So you're not going to be able to read everything on them. They're just sort of for evidence and for your reference later. I'll give you a Google link. So we'll talk about this, the Smarter World Order. So that is the Smart Cities program, and look at some of its key features. Then we're going to look at visioning smarter cities through comprehensive planning, and we'll get into some of the global guidelines for that will help you to see the language that is being used in your comprehensive plan. So then we will, whenever I go to someplace, I try to look at their comprehensive plan and unpack it and decode it. And they're all from a template, so it's pretty easy. But I have to do a little bit of searching to figure out who's responsible in which area and how it's going. But we're going to look at the Onward Chickasha plan and some other plans that are going on in Oklahoma. So we'll look at those, and then at the end, I'd like to talk about outsmarting the Smarter World Order. So how do you recognize these plans and fight back? So that is our rough sketch of where we're going to go. Oops, see? I always do that. Okay, so who is relatively familiar with the concept of a smart city? Okay, good. You're a very well-educated audience then. So a smart city is basically one that is based on the principles of smart growth. That means economic growth. So this is a slide from Smart Growth America, and I recommend that you go to their website because they tell you everything that I'm going to tell you, all in neat, tidy form, bullet points, and you can search your city. Now, I didn't find Chickasha on the Smart Growth America plan, but Pawhuska is, and I was just in Osage County doing this in Pawhuska, and they have a pilot program with Smart Growth America. So this is an important website, and what do they say about smart growth? It is a vision for a county or a city. It's going to be a mega region is where this is headed, where you live, or no matter where you live or who you are, you can enjoy living in a place that is healthy, prosperous, and resilient. Okay, those are all buzzwords, and they all sound very nice, right? Who wouldn't want to live in a healthy, prosperous, resilient place? Well, you're not going to want to once you recognize that those are the template words. So then, what does that mean? We have to unpack it. And what we're going to see is that it is an economic vision that relies on manipulating things like land use and zoning and transportation policy in order to promote this new economic vision. Okay, so you can see I have on the list on the side where you have like mixed land use, and you've probably seen that coming up in zoning meetings on zoning. They'll talk about mixed land use, high density development, compact development. All of those are parts of smart growth, and they are for an economic program, and I'm going to show you that in just a minute. So sort of toward the bottom here, you'll see that it talks about smart growth is about making sorry, I have to read my own writing here. Okay, locations where daily needs are close by. Creating homes for families of all income levels alongside one another in locations where daily needs are close by. That is a 15-minute city. That's what it means. And we'll talk about what a 15-minute city is. Basically, it is, where you have a radius of about a quarter to half mile, so that's 15 minutes walking, in which all of your daily needs can be met. Now that sounds very nice to some people, but what this is really about is about containing you in districts or zones so that you never have to leave those zones. And the reason why we have those is because, like, why this new economic program wants to put people into zones is so that they can test different ways of changing your behavior. So it's like little experiments where you're in a contained, environment, a Skinner box, so that they can control all the variables and they can look at your demographic information, what kinds of inputs you've had as a human being, and they can say, oh, this makes this happen. And it worked well in this district, but we found out, because we looked at another 15-minute district, that it doesn't work well. And then they can implement a social engineering program. So that's what this is about. What we'll do tonight is decode some of this language. So you have there the smart 15-minute city, and it talks about, above all, it's about helping every town and city. Chickasha, Tulsa, New York, Austin, it doesn't matter, become more economically prosperous, socially equitable, and environmentally sustainable place to live, helping everyone flourish. So this is sold in wonderful language that appeals to people, but they don't know what it's about. And if you've heard of ESG scoring, that's what this is related to. So I have that right there. Oops, I've got to figure this out. Okay, so just a nicer, tidier definition of what a smart city is this: it uses information and communications technologies, that's ICT for short, to improve operational efficiency, share information with the public, and provide better quality of government service and citizen welfare. Again, it sounds great, right? Chickasha is so inefficient in this or that. So what are we going to do? We're going to bring in more technology that's going to make it much more efficient. That is part of becoming a smart city. So there are many aspects to a smart city. Some of them are automating government. So for example, in Tulsa, if you try to get the city on the phone to talk to a person about something, it's very difficult. You know, it's like when you call a call center and you get put through like a robocall, and you're pressing 1 for this or that. That is part of becoming a smart city. And I don't know if Chickasha has that yet, but it's probably coming, okay? And it's going to be sold to you in the name of improving efficiency. So that's one aspect of it, and delivering services that people enjoy. But the main goal of a smart city, and this is from TWI Global, which is a huge multinational consulting firm. The main goal of a smart city is to optimize city functions and promote economic growth. So smart city is about the new economic order that we'll go into. It's an economic order based on social credit scoring. That's the new currency. To optimize city functions and promote economic growth, quality of life for citizens by using smart technologies and data analysis. So the information and communications technologies, and these include the signals on your traffic lights. These include things like if your water department comes out and you get it, this just happened to me in Tulsa. We had a new water heater installed, and the city wants to take a picture of it. I said, why do you want to take a picture of my water heater? They're like, oh, we just do that all the time. And I said, well, I don't want a picture of my water heater in your city database. He said, okay. Like, why wouldn't you want that, But that is part of creating a database that is going to measure and manage all resources. So this is how they come up with a catalog of all of your property, all of your talents, all of your preferences, and then you will be measured and managed. Just like China, right? We don't think it's coming here because it has been in China for a long time, and we think we're free, but it's rolling out here quite steadily through corporations partnering with the government. Okay, so the data analysis and the smart technologies, they're all for the economic growth. And if you want to know if your city is becoming smart, then you can look at some of these characteristics in the profile that I have. Is an infrastructure based on technology. It is environmental initiatives. These are things like conservation easements, requirements for riparian buffer zones, parks, green spaces, all those. Effective and highly functional public transportation. This is ride sharing. What was it? I think I saw Oklahoma City just has a city-led vehicle sharing service. Okay, you've heard the WEF, the World Economic Forum slogan, "You'll own nothing and be happy." If you share a ride, you borrow cars from the city, that is getting you close to the "you'll own nothing and be happy." So they're absolutely doing it, we just don't recognize it. Confident and progressive city plans. Onward, Chickasha is your confident and progressive city plan. And people able to live and work within the city using its resources. That means that you never leave. So whenever you see the slogan, live, work, play, that means do it all there because you're never gonna leave. And really, it's not even the 15-minute district, it's your building. So I was in Dallas, and they have a huge stack and pack, smart housing, and it has plastered on it, I use this picture all the time, live, work, play. That means you never have to leave. How do you get your groceries? The drones deliver them to you. There's an Amazon plant that I just passed on the way here. It's all gonna come from there. And we have drone corridors, and it's coming. So they really wanna keep you in a Skinner box so that they can figure out how to manipulate you to their own ends. So here's a slide, this is from the UN, and it talks about what a smart city is. And it says, a smart, sustainable city is an innovative city, that's a buzzword, that uses ICTs and other means to improve the quality of life, efficiency of urban operation and services, and competitiveness, while ensuring that it meets the needs of present and future generations. If you download this slide and you just sort of memorize that definition, you're gonna see that phrase, that sentence, repeated over and over again. So what that means is that any plan, any government proposal, any private corporate proposal that talks about improving quality of life for future generations, balancing economic growth with environmental protection, you are dealing with a New World Order plan. A smart city is based on smart infrastructure. And all over Oklahoma, we're doing infrastructure upgrades. So broadband, wireless, what else? Water treatment, that's a big one. I'm not sure if Chickasha is doing it, but upgrading water treatment facilities as part of smart infrastructure to do what? Measure and manage everything. And so we read again that smart infrastructure is the foundation for all the key themes related to a smart city, including smart people. I mean, that should make you worry. Smart people, smart mobility, smart economy, smart living, smart governance, and smart environment. The core characteristics of this infrastructure is that they generate data, which may be used intelligently, that means by AI, to ensure the optimal use of resources and improve performance. What that means is that you're gonna have an automated system that measures for how well different scenarios will lead to some outcome. And this is an outcome that the giant corporations, the globalists, the WEF, they want. It is not an outcome that you want, but they're going to optimize performance, your performance, in order to ensure that we have maximum resource efficiency. Oops, every time. So just to really scare you about this, because maybe it's not scaring you yet. These are some slides from Ericsson, which is a giant Swedish telecommunications provider. And they partner with the UN Habitat Program, and they are part of the Global Compact, the UN Global Compact. They published a paper in 2022 called 6G, Connecting a Cyber-Physical World. I would be embarrassed to publish that, because it seems evil to me. But this is a paper that is published by a corporation, a for-profit corporation, and this is what they say. 6G makes it possible to move in a cyber-physical continuum. The network provides intelligence, limitless connectivity, and full synchronization of the physical and digital worlds. So everything that exists in the physical world, your ideas, your resources, your children, they will have a digital twin. That is a digital representation in the metaverse. Now, why? Well, it's for simulating situations and running like games to see what kinds of outcomes will occur under different circumstances. And that's the basis of this new economy. So they want to make a copy of everything about you, about your property, about your ideas, your mind, and digitalize it. Now, what is that for? Look, actuators in the real world, that's us, carry out commands from intelligent agents in the digital world. This is a for-profit corporation that has published this paper. This is not a YouTube video by, somebody. Okay, so they're saying that the people, we are going to follow the commands of AI. And they're setting it up all over. I mean, if you call the city of Tulsa, you're gonna fall into the set of options that's given to you, and everybody is complying because you just want to get your stuff done because you're busy and you just want to make it through. So we're not fighting it, we're not figuring out what's really going on, but this is what's going on. And it occurs on multiple levels. So it says, it becomes possible to trace back and analyze events, observe and act in real time, as well as to simulate, predict, and program future actions. So a huge part of a smart city is nudging you toward outcomes that evil controllers want. So they have a list of things that they want us to do. I mean, really, they don't want us around. But we're here, so they have to do something with us. They're really going to make money, nudging us this way and that. They're going to program future actions by controlling your environment. So this is, it goes back, I mentioned a Skinner box. This is B.F. Skinner, who is a psychologist, who is a behavioralist, and he looks at how your environment can condition you to do this or that. So that's what this is about. The 15-minute cities, putting you in a little zone, it is about controlling variables to control you. Nudges are little carrots and sticks. So your employer, for example, might say, oh, we want our employees to be really well. Wellness is a priority. Safety is a priority. Resilience is a priority. So we want our insurance costs to go down. So if you will go to the gym 4 times a month, we'll give you a little $10 gift card. Okay, that's a nudge. It's a carrot, but there will be sticks. And those sticks will be given through this artificial intelligence system, an automated system. I'm really trying to scare you. So this is, again, it's from that same paper. An automated society, so this is the whole society, would harvest the benefits of AI assistance for improving people's welfare and simplifying their lives. How nice, right? We are going to have intelligent machines that are in our homes, acting autonomously and adapting to human action. Intelligent identity and preference handling will assist people in everyday life, managing interactions with and adapting the connected world around them in line with their preferences. A sustainable world, it says digital inclusion, support of smart automation services everywhere on the planet. And then it goes on and it says this is going to, through the global end-to-end life cycle tracking of goods, autonomous supply chains can accelerate a full circular resource economy. Has anyone heard of the sharing economy, the circular economy? This is where you don't own anything, and they track and trace every single item that's produced to see, farm to table. You've heard that. It's part of normalizing this end-to-end analysis. So you have like the zero waste movement. And this is about measuring and managing your life. Okay. That circular economy means that you don't own anything. You turn one thing into another. So there's, everything's always in a process. And, what was I thinking? There was one thing that I just wanted to say, but I lost it. It'll come back to me. Life cycle tracking of goods, autonomous supply chains, a resource-based economy. Okay, so we're moving to an economy that does not deal in money. Now, the Bartlesville Examiner, they wrote me up for my Pawhuska talk, and they said, Osage County GOP has crazy speaker who says we're going to go without money. We are, so I'm going to tell it to you, and if there are any members of the press, then I said it, yeah. I was actually happy that he wrote that, because the Tulsa World is just fluff. They're like, oh, she's just stirring up people. So a resource-based economy is one in which you trade not in money and prices help us negotiate value, right? So, a chair is worth something to me, and that might differ from what it's worth to you. And we can negotiate that difference through money. It's objective, it's easy to transport, it's worked for thousands of years. But we are moving toward a resource-based economy, which is basically bartering, but it's not bartering in real physical, tangible things, like I want the chair, so I'm gonna, give you a skillet that I have. This is about trading social credits. So that's the kind of resource-based economy we're moving into, a digitalized resource-based economy in which you trade credits that you have achieved by doing what? Following the nudges that the AI has given you, okay? Where does it come from? I'm going to sort of speed through this because I have lots of videos on it and you guys probably know it. It comes from the UN. There's a resolution, and really there are lots of corporations and big bankers that are behind the UN. They just have to give it a veneer of legitimacy that makes it look like this is something that the peoples of the world's nations want. I don't think anyone wants it. I think the UN is just a facade, really, for these bankers and evil Satanists, really. But we'll look at we'll take their documents for what it's worth, and we'll say, okay, in 1974, they established a program for a new international economic order. So this is all about changing the way that we exchange value and manage our lives. Okay, there's sort of three really important phases to that. There's the 1974 resolution. In 1992, we had Agenda 21. And then in 2015, we had the 2030 Agenda. And that gets you to the Sustainable Development Goals. And there are 17 of those goals that were articulated. And those are the benchmarks for your good behavior. So social credit is based on achieving those 17 global goals. And actually, they're talking about adding an 18th. And if you don't make progress toward those goals, like no poverty, healthy communities, clean land and water, then you will be a social liability, and you will have less resources to trade with other people. Okay, it sounds wild, doesn't it? it took me a long time to like come to terms with the fact that this is really happening. But it is. So the Agenda 21 articulated sustainable development. So in your city plan, when you see sustainable economic growth, it is sustainable development. And what is it about? Here are some phrases that are stand-ins for sustainable development. Managed growth, balancing values, anything that is for the future, prosperity for all, protect and preserve, and a common vision, unified vision, shared vision, and that's all over your plan, your Chickasha plan. So what is sustainable development about? It is about balancing economic growth with the need to protect environmental resources. Now, I don't think that they really care about the planet at all. They're ruining it, but it's a good narrative, and they're master propagandists since, I told you I looked at symbols. So what do they have a very optimistic view, and they say, we can promote new markets and access to trade opportunities, especially through high-tech and digital platforms. So they want to push all of your kids into coding and, these high-tech 4IR areas, we'll get into that in a minute, in order to develop a workforce, because the old way of doing things is going down the tubes. So, building things, being a machinist, being a farmer, a rancher, these things are being made obsolete through high technology. And so, our resetters, that's what I like to call them, they know that carries with it this risk of social instability. People will revolt, but they want to keep you too busy to revolt or too distracted to revolt, so they're going to offer you workforce development. That was what that P20 pipeline is about. They're going to say, we're going to give you these new jobs, we're going to attract new industries, and really all of those are based in this super high-tech program that's making human workers obsolete. Okay, but that's the basis for their economic growth. Now, all of those technologies actually generate the data that's going to be traded and used for the social engineering. Okay, and we'll just skip the environmental. Okay, so I mentioned 4IR. This is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. It is a super high-tech program of fusing technologies that blur the lines between the physical, digital, and biological spheres. And I showed you the cyber-physical continuum from Erickson. That phrase is used over and over again from major corporations. So it's not just a goofy think tank in Switzerland. It's many corporations, and they're all planning it. The vision is for billions of people connected by mobile devices with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity, and access to knowledge, and then these super high-tech programs. Okay, Oklahoma City is a cognitive city. That's a level above a smart city in terms of its data analytics. So all of the data that we are generating that goes into the cloud, that is the basis for this new economic order and for this new control system. Okay? So, our resetters like to look at promise and perils. So with this high technology, we have promise, or we have perils. Those are bad things that could happen. And then we have the promise of it. And of course, our resetters are going to emphasize the promise. So the bad things that technology is going to bring are planetary collapse. We use too much, we've made too much, it's cheap to make plastic bottles, and it's going to drown all the fish and we're going to die. Okay, also, this is really important, nationalism and geopolitical chaos. Okay, you will see, if you start paying attention to the propaganda, that they are talking about Americans have lost trust in their government. We've lost trust in our institutions. This is, and then, of course, then there are all of these destabilizing events and the wealth gap and other things that do lead to actual instability. But that narrative is actually being created. Why? Because all of these are the problems And they're going to tell you those problems, and they're going to create those problems so that we beg for their solutions. Okay? So they take it as a fact that the 4IR is rolling out, and they say it can lead to massive violence on a geopolitical scale, or we can plan well and fix it. Okay, so that is the goal and the way that they do the narrative. So the new economy that they're moving us toward is global. They're going to break down trade barriers. That's what inclusive eco-sustainability is about. They're going to break down national barriers. State governments, kiss them goodbye in the U.S. And I would urge you, we have to protect our state government, okay? And use the states to get the national government back in check because it's run by criminals right now. But they're going to tell you, we've lost trust in our institutions, so we better just do what? Give it over to the private sector because they are good at fixing things. They're good at solutions. And there was, a lot of to-do about that with the vaccine mandate. The propaganda said the government couldn't make the vaccine, but the private sector could, and voila, it's wonderful. So this shows us that we need to get rid of government, okay? And so it's global, break down borders. It's private. They're going to outsource everything to the robots, the AI, and the private sector. And they do that in a sneaky way through public-private partnerships, which are not accountable to the people at all. And you're going to see your town transferring its assets to stakeholder councils that will manage them. That means that you, the voter, have no say over those assets. Okay. And then it's going to be data-driven, so it's a full circular resource-based economy in which you measure and monetize true value. And if we look at what that is, it is the ESG goals. Okay, so I just kind of went over this. You can see I love these little slides. These are from the World Economic Forum. Now's the time for a great reset. And then how the finance industry can save the world. And so I recommend you read it. It's a crazy article where they say, we can solve the very problems that we've created. What they're going to do, and I just kind of went over this, is they're going to institute a global, privatized, and data-driven economy. Down at the bottom there, economic growth is a function of tracked or verified progress toward the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So you have to pick a kind of an outcome. You have to say, well, we're making progress toward, continuous improvement toward. And so the SDGs are a nice, tidy goal. Those are goals, and they can really be manipulated to mean anything. And at some point, we might get rid of those woke goals as the outcomes, and it can shift the other way to a very, right-wing set of goals. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the economy is based on tracking impact and making that the basis of, whether or not corporations get capital investments from the big banks who own everything. Okay, this is kind of the dense stuff, so I really won't get into it because we want to get on to Chickasha. Impact measurement, this just shows you, this is just evidence that says this is a new type of investing that is made with the intention to generate positive, measurable social, environmental impact alongside a financial return. So that means you're transforming society toward the goals. This is from the Global Impact Investing Network, big, huge group of investors, including Michael Bloomberg, George Kaiser is one. They're all over, and they are going to measure and manage, or measure and report in order to manage our society. And you can see, they tell you exactly what they're doing. What gets measured gets managed. How sustainability reporting can save the planet? Well, it's about really controlling the planet and everyone in it. And then you can see after COVID-19, global trade from fixed capital to human capital. So instead of a resource being based, or an economy being based on, the use of money to trade physical items and resources, the economy is going to run on changing human beings and manipulating them ad infinitum, because that is what a truly sustainable economy is. I'm going to skip ahead here. This is how it's done, just so that you have evidence. Like I said, you can go back and look at these. This is the new urban agenda, which is the plan for smart cities, and it talks about 15-minute smart cities. And if you look at that language, it's just like what your consultants are putting into your plan. They did it in McAlester. So you can see this is the International Guidelines on Urban and Territorial Planning. Your comprehensive plan, all comprehensive plans follow these international guidelines. And what are they for? Realizing economic, social, cultural, and environmental goals. That is ESG, that is the social engineering. Through the development of spatial visions, strategies, I should look at my paper here, plans and the application of a set of policy principles, institutional and participatory mechanisms, and regulatory procedures. So when they talk about spatial visions, that means controlling your land use. We saw that on the first slide. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to sort of do this part fast, but I have a list here, how to identify the reset agenda in comprehensive planning documents. And I just sort of show you some slides with sections from the international guidelines, and then I try to unpack them. And if you look at these documents, they're all the same. Once you've read one, you've read all of them. What you do, and I'll go back over this again, is you scan your document for buzzwords, phrases, and graphics. They're always repeated, and I've got a list of top 10, but I actually have a list of like 1,000. So if you know those buzzwords and you just look and your document has it, then you're on pretty good footing there in thinking that it's a New World Order program. Number 2, you compare the document structure with the reset template, which is looking at section titles and the topics, so like land use, transportation, mobility, housing, neighborhoods, all this stuff is the same over and over. And if you've got the topics, then it's pretty likely that you are following these principles. Then you test for the communitarian balancing formula and specific policy solutions. So the balancing formula is like economic growth with environmental protection. Or for small towns, it'll say economic growth and protecting rural character, or small town charm, or cultural heritage, because they know that the people in the small towns are really suspicious of environmental initiatives. So they have a different language for you. I did a video on that for Rogers County, Claremont. Okay, then the 4th thing, these are my 5 steps. Check the credentials of the authors, consultants, marketing firms, including local stakeholders. This is what we're going to do with your plan in just presently. You look at them, you look at their website, and you say, oh, do they have the global words all over them? Are they talking about stakeholder capitalism? Then you've got a New World Order plan. And then you cross-check any complementary plans, because often they hide things that they don't want to say in one document, they'll put it in another. Okay, so you can see, this is just all the measuring, monitoring. That's how you know you're getting a smart city. They talk about land use and zoning and transportation, but it's really all about the smart city and the information and communications technologies. Compact cities, you can see. Urban management, that's what it's about. Continuous monitoring. Geospatial technologies, this is your mapping. If any of you are farmers, ranchers, you know the USDA is requiring you to track every cow, every feather on every chicken. They have the capacity to do that, and they're doing it. Why? Because they're going to rate you with a personal ESG score. This is social credit scoring for Americans, okay? And you can just imagine what that's like. So you can see this is a company that I got this information from. It's not the WEF. It's a for-profit company that talks about only the person with a high personal ESG score gets the opportunity for employment. Now that's important because the 4IR is making human workers obsolete. No work. So people are going to want jobs, so they're going to clamor to have the high personal ESG score, which means that you follow the UN global goals. Okay. See, there's lots on it. Okay, so here is your plan, the moment you've been waiting for. This is actually a letter of intent from, I think you say Guernsey. They're the consultants that I think wanted about $160,000 of taxpayer money to formulate a plan for Chickasha. And they say, the city of Chickasha can trust Guernsey and Company to develop a long-range comprehensive plan to address future growth. Okay? Buzzwords, future growth for the future, right? I showed you that on sustainable development. And decision-making in the community planning is a necessity and requires a vision, passion, commitment, blah, blah. Okay, a viable long-range comprehensive plan results when the intangible characteristics identified above, that is your metaverse weird world, align to formulate a future that creates value on many levels. Like these are digital levels. This is the metaverse. This is imaginary, basically. And that's why they use that phrase all the time. Reimagining, reimagining. It's because it's all fake, actually. But these intangibles are going to align to formulate a future that creates value on many levels and a sustainable and better quality of life for the citizens in the community and the region. It's regional, so the Agenda 21 is a regional plan. Whenever they're talking about community, it's always New World Order. And then this quality of life, those are the Sustainable Development Goals. That's what is meant by quality of life. Okay, your planning approach, I know we've got to end. I dump a lot of information on you, I'm sorry, and I'm not very exciting, so thank you for bearing with me on this. This is really an important snip because you have the phrase balancing and guiding fiscally responsible growth. That is a phrase that I found looking at Tulsa's comprehensive plan, which is 500 pages long, and you had to go through and figure out the definition. What that means, fiscally responsible growth, is that they don't want to build any new infrastructure. They want to repair old infrastructure. This is how they make a city compact. They don't want urban sprawl, so they're going to say fiscally responsible. We're only going to allow new development where the infrastructure is already able to manage that capacity that the new development would bring upon it. So one, you're going to get a justification for infrastructure upgrades, and they will be smart. And two, this is leading to a compact city because they don't want to build any new infrastructure out and about. And if you have a business or, a home or something out on the outskirts, watch for that infrastructure to be allowed to slowly degrade. And then they're not going to fix it because they're going to say more growth is in the city. We have to prioritize the city core. Okay, in Tulsa, they've already hollowed out the city core by driving everyone out with tyrannical policies, and then the developers could buy the land on the cheap. And then they can put in the smart infrastructure and charge exorbitant prices when they push everyone who's moved out to the suburbs back in. And I talked to a city councilor and he was like, yes, they're absolutely doing that. So you can see quality of life, balancing fiscally responsible growth, development and redevelopment. You've got safety, welfare, and it says they're going to develop this community engagement strategy. That actually means that they're just going to sort of placate you while they go forward with their plan. So I looked up in the proposal for the Chickasha plan, they cite all of the other plans that they've done. I mean, it's not hard to figure this out. So I did a talk in McAlester, and their plan is terrible. It's just as bad as Tulsa's. It's very far along in the Smart City New World Order agenda, and Guernsey actually cites, they were the consultants for the McAlester plan, which I had looked at, and I can tell you it's very bad. All of these things, these are the titles and section things, the section titles and topics that you can look for. Those all come from the international guidelines for urban development. Okay, so this is from the McAlester plan, and they say, ensure economic development will enhance and enrich the quality of life in McAlester. Plan for and provide public utilities that adequately serve the population. These are going to be smart. And encourage efficient use of land and fiscal resources. What they're going to do is they're going to decide where they want to put public transportation. And they're going to create hubs, and those are going to be compact, or they're going to promote compact, like stack and pack development around those hubs and the clustering of jobs and residential areas, so that people are basically forced to live near public transportation. And they are taking your car. They're going to just tax you out of it. But if you look at the McAlester plan, you can see what these folks are going to do with your city. And it's real. They're going to say public services. Okay, your smart city, evaluate housing to establish a method to ensure various types that are safe, healthy, served by all public utilities, and connectivity. So connectivity is really important because the broadband and Wi-Fi, all of your LED lights, the street lights, those are all transmitting data, and it's moving toward Wi-Fi rather than Wi-Fi data sharing. And then they're going to provide well-designed transportation. So transportation, I have a video on transit-oriented development, which is how you talk about a 15-minute city to Americans, because they won't figure out what it is. But you can see this is from the McAlester plan, written by the consultants that are doing Onward Chickasha. They say implement complete street principles, multimodal green design, and smart systems. This is electric autonomous vehicles, drones that you share. Complete streets, that's total smart city. This is Tulsa's plan, and you can see this is from 2016. It was submitted to the U.S. Department of Transportation, which is leading the way in the New World Order. They did a challenge call for people to get grants, cities to get grants for their smart city programs. Both Oklahoma City and Tulsa applied. Okay, that's a big deal. We think in Oklahoma, who wants a smart city? Yet our two largest cities, which are heavily invested in by Michael Bloomberg and George Kaiser and many other billionaires, they are promoting this because they know that they want to move us toward this resource-based economy of social credit. And you can see, I mean, this was 2016, autonomous vehicles, connected networks, connected vehicles, accelerometers, collect massive amounts of data, real-time traffic monitoring, car-free zones, smart delivery. I mean, it just goes on and on. Like, I couldn't make it up, right? And so, who's doing it? You know, I said that's one of the things that you need to, if you want to know that you've got a New World Order plan, you need to look at the stakeholders and contributors to the plan. Well, you know, I make these slides not knowing who's going to be in the audience and not caring, frankly. People don't like to appear on my slides, but maybe it will be an education. That Chickasha Economic Development Council is fully behind this. Your Chamber of Commerce is fully behind this. And what is their mission? It is to accelerate sustainable growth and economic vitality in the city of Chickasha for quality of life. That means SDGs. So now you know who's doing it, and you can stop them. And they say, what is a comprehensive plan? It's from their website, Onward Chickasha. Its purpose is to establish a shared vision for the community that will be used to guide future actions and decisions, including the physical, economic, and social development. That is ESG. They say physical, not environment. But that's what it's about. You are really an interesting place because you're a foreign trade zone, so that directly leads into the globalized economy. Sorry. You have new market tax credits and hub zones. Those are going to, prioritize private development rather than public development. And basically it's outsourcing government so that it is unaccountable to the voters. And you're an opportunity zone. That means that when they try to make money, making, progress toward the goals, it means that you're at a very low baseline to begin with. So there are extra incentives for investing in an opportunity zone. And then you can also raise that progress toward the goals, very easily. Whereas if you went someplace that wasn't an opportunity zone, it would require more of an outlay of their capital. But these are some of the things when you try to fight this. Thank you. When you try to fight this, know that these are particular to your area. And, I think you're a logistics hub, right? So you are right in the path for the globalized, data-driven economy. This is interesting. So there's a downtown Chickasha placemaking strategy. Every downtown looks the same. I mean, they are all kind of cute, but all the revitalization looks the same. You got an axe throwing bar? Yeah. I think that's like the most decadent thing ever. Like, why do you have to go drink a beer and throw an axe? Like, really, we should all be just chopping down, our trees for firewood. And then you wouldn't have to do that. But everyone's doing that. Everyone has like little bicycles and ramen noodle bars, and they're all the same, and they're all part of placemaking. And OU has, and they're in way deep. They have the Institute for Quality Communities, which is promoting this placemaking strategy. Also the Oklahoma Municipal League, which I think I talked about maybe that was with Jake on a show. I think we talked about that league, right? They're tied to ICLEA, which is a Sustainable Development National Organization, International, I'm sorry. And you can see that your propaganda, a vision for the future. So you've got this $5 million development from a California entrepreneur, and they're going to turn you into a tourist town, right? So all the little towns are being turned into tourist destination spots. And that appeals to the little towns because they're struggling economically, and so you want to attract people. But tourism isn't creating anything. It's creating experiences and people who are transient, who come in and out. And it's all someone else's vision of what's cool. I was going to go see your leg lamp with my kiddos. But and then what is it? Catoosa has the big blue whale. And every little town is getting some of these weird things that are kind of fun, and they sort of can structure a day trip or something. But it's all to move you away from making things that are actually valuable and just offering experiences to those who have enough social credits to enjoy them. So, when you have California entrepreneurs, this is not just people being stodgy conservatives. It's actually about who has the money to invest to socially engineer your town. And it looks fun when there's a brewery coming in, or cool restaurant or something like this, but below the surface, because they know that small town America is on guard, so they sneak it in. In Tulsa, our comprehensive plan is so blatant. Edmonds is so blatant. Like, you just read it and it is woke all over. They don't try to hide it from us. They try to hide it from you. They try to hide it from Rogers County, Osage County. But when you see placemaking strategy, you've got it going. Okay, you've got your master plan from FSB Architects. Look at their website, total globalist group. Most architects are. So again, this is just a wrap up. How to identify the reset agenda? Look for the buzzwords. They're easy to spot. I've got a top 10 list at the end. Look for the graphics. You can see here the Moving McAlester Forward Plan. It has this graphic right here, which is a copy of the SDG graphic. When you see these color blocks, they use the same symbols all over. And then look for the balancing formula, and this is an example from the Rogers County plan. like I said, you'll be able to see these later. Then look at those topics and section titles. If you have a vision statement, you know you've got a New World Order plan. And so you're going to have to educate your Economic Development Council. They don't care. I mean, actually, I think you're going to have to just say, we're taking this responsibility away from you and returning it to the people. But look at those documents, look at these kinds of land uses, these tools, and then, you know, who is promoting the plan? It's usually big companies locally, and then think tanks, and then look at your reference plans. So these are 2 examples from Tulsa. We have, you know, a regional transportation plan, a bikes and trails plan. You guys have them too. So if you can just learn their patterns, then you can defend yourself. Now, you don't have to understand all of this about impact investing, although it would be helpful, but you just have to know that there's a New World Order program rolling out. And the key right now is to say, stop, pause, you know, no new things, even if they look like they're conservative leaning, no new policy until we check it out. And then really get involved and say, we're gonna go through this document and ask you about every word. And you know, the Bartlesville Examiner and the Tulsa World, they all pick on me for saying that you should shame public officials. And so I think, well, come on, we live in a representative you know, government. We have a constitutional system, it's representative. So our elected officials represent us. They work for us, right? Yeah. So if they don't do their job, if they're selling us out to the globalists, then I think it's natural to our system to call them out and shame them publicly. They've taken an oath of office and put themselves in that light. But I think the fact that these papers have picked on me for it shows that it's actually a very powerful tool, because it is exposing what is going on, and what our researchers are terrified of is that the people will understand this larger program. They want you to be so desperate for economic growth that you will just take all of the 4IR garbage that they throw out. And we have to say, nope, we're not going to do that. We would rather wait and not have the growth, miss the big corporate investment, because those corporations that relocate to here, there, wherever, are just going to replace people with robots anyway. So if you pause, I think that is, you know, time right now is a precious resource. And if we can give ourselves some time to organize, to fight back, to understand, then we'll be in a much better position. So thank you for enduring this very long talk. It always goes longer than I wish, but I'll be happy to take a couple of questions if anyone wants to stay. And if you need to leave, I totally understand.
I have a question. You mentioned the hot water heater, so I assume that the merchants in Tulsa are required to report a sale like that to someone in city government. If someone showed up at your door and said, we want to take a picture.
Oh, well, I had to get a permit. You know, you have to have it inspected. I don't know if this is only Tulsa, you know, I mean, you do. So, you know, so when we bought the water heater, then our plumber said, okay, now you have to call the city and have it inspected, and that's up to you. It's your responsibility. But if you don't do it, you know, they can fine you. So.
We live outside of city limits, so we had to do it.
Yeah.
He's replaced several hot water heaters, and they're working fine.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's how, you know, this question about like licensing and permits, that is how, you know, that's how the U.S. is going to go down. It's going to be incrementally. You know, when people look at this kind of thing and they say, we're going to be out of food in 2 months, you know, well, I've seen no really major, I mean, there have been disruptions with supply chains for like appliances, for, I've heard farm equipment, for, you know, certain things here and there, but pretty much you can always go get your Coke and your chips and even some fresh fruit and vegetables from the stores, right? So I think that those sort of cataclysmic projections are a little bit, you know, you can sort of take them with a grain of salt. But what is going to happen is this incremental taxation. Because we're moving toward an economy that is based on measuring progress toward these goals of healthy water, land use, then the governments, and they're being used, right, by these corporations and investors, big asset managers. They have to have the information about what you have, and they're going to take your money to get your information, and it's going to be a slow buildup of taxes that we have to pay so that they can prove that they are making progress toward the goal. Oh, well, we're monitoring for safety. We're monitoring for a healthy community. So how are they doing that? By forcing people to pay a tax to have this or that. Yeah, in the back.
Or like the move recently from the proposal move from a gas tax to a mileage tax?
Yes, so Oklahoma has a pay per mile pilot program. So you see all of the surveillance going up along the highways, it all magically appeared in every city in the US and every city in the world. These large LED cameras, and Oklahoma City I thought Tulsa was bad, but Oklahoma City is terrible. And they all just went up, and those are, there's a range of cameras, and they have road surface resurfacing that can measure it too, but those are all to track and trace your vehicle. And the flock safety cameras that people are installing in the neighborhoods, the governments are doing, like municipal governments are doing that in high crime areas, but then homeowners associations are installing those flock safety cameras too. And those are all to know how many vehicle miles you have traveled. And the street lights will do it as well. So we're moving away from that gas tax because they know that they're moving to electric vehicles and they're going to lose money. And they still want to rip you off. And they want to make it too expensive to drive.
You did say that.
They say that, if you look at what Oklahoma City and Tulsa are doing, both mayors are best friends with Michael Bloomberg. Like, I don't care if you're left or right on the political spectrum, he is not a good guy. Where has he made his money? It's in data analytics, it's in media propaganda. Look at what happened in New York City with 24/7 stop and frisk. Like, he is not a good guy. And he and George Kaiser are partners in the same investment firm. And they have sponsored, all the little toadies in Oklahoma, these grasping mayors. They do what these large investors want. So, Bynum, our mayor, he's like won awards in Michael Bloomberg's Cities of Service program, which is a smart city program. And a lot of this is coming through OU, OSU. I mean, if you look at the boards of your universities, universities are anchor institutions for the New World Order because they have public trust. People like education, they like, thinking of young people going and learning wonderful information and making progress. And they love the football team. So universities have a good reputation in our society. So we're not going to be so suspicious of what they're doing. But what they're doing is partnering with private firms to transfer technologies. So you have like the public that supports OU funding research for geospatial technologies. Well, OU is partnered with the WEF on these geospatial technologies like satellites and for surveillance. And they transfer that publicly funded, or the technologies funded by the public to these private corporations. It's a bad deal. But yeah, so our mayor, he's, if people just don't, one thing that has ingratiated the public, even the sort of conservative leaning public of Tulsa to Mayor Bynum is that he talks about bipartisanship and getting over politics and what works policy. So that sounds like, oh, we're going to stop the fussing and fighting. We're going to do something that is based on evidence. It's broadly appealing to left and right. But those are buzzwords, and they mean tested through surveillance. You know, just like they do in the public schools, in the charter schools. That's what they're doing. So yeah, people like him. They shouldn't.
Can you put your web address where we can review this?
Yeah, I have a website, but it is, you know, I just don't have the time to update it. But I post a lot on Facebook, and it's a publicly accessible profile, and that's just my name. But then I have a YouTube that's hearts over hexagons, and I think that's on the slide. But what I'll do is I'll make a folder, a Google Drive folder that has all of these slides, so you can actually zoom in, and then the supporting documents. So, I mean, I might forget to put one in, and if that happens, then you can just email me, or Carrie knows how to get it.
We'll make sure they're available.
Yeah, we'll get them to you. But you know, I have all of those documents so that you can look through and see for yourself.
I have a quick question.
Mhm.
So my lane is education and how the private-public partnership. I heard buzzwords that we've been fighting for 30 years, the P21. You know, we've been saying for years that that's the main goal of schools. And so you mentioned higher education. Can you address what possibly a lure of a tax credit or a private partnership with a corporation to do a lot of the STEM activities? And I know Norman just they're doing some kind of STEM activities, and it makes it look great that we're doing this
Yeah.
aerospace thing in the elementary schools.
Oh yeah, well, because, so, you know, the universities, they want lots of money to pay for what? For the grounds, to attract new students, to get the big grants. You know, I mean, they want the big grants. That is one thing that elevates them in the rankings. But then there's also just the crony factor. You know, the people who run universities are friends with the major investors, the major financiers in our area and beyond. And, you know, I mean, these universities have prestige, and that is a key resource in this new resource-based economy, is your reputation capital. Universities are trusted, people don't suspect them of doing bad things, so when they roll out a program for, you know, coding for kids, or STEM education, or, you know, we're gonna take poor kids and we're gonna teach them how to, you know, write internet code or something like this. It elevates their brand, their reputation capital, social credit, and the people who make the big donations to the universities are the ones who are going to reap a financial benefit from the 4IR transformation of the workforce. So they want to teach your kids to code so that they'll do it just long enough and very creatively, because children have that creativity that's going to make a new digital experience. You know, by the time you're my age, even if I knew how to code, it would be boring, right? But children have, you know, wide-ranging imaginations, and they want to harvest the data. So when a university partners, especially with a private company or a foundation, they are kicking back the data, and they say, we're monitoring, we're tracking this. You know, it's for your safety, security, it's to prove our impact. Well, they're actually looking at how children learn so that they can harvest that process and feed it into the AI that's going to make sure the kids have no jobs. You know, so I've got 4 kids. My oldest is 12 and youngest is 5, and I never ask them what they want to be when they grow up. I did walk by, we were in Fort Worth, Texas, you know, in their stockyard area, which is like a tourist spot, and it's all redeveloped, revitalized, has nothing to do with, you know, an actual stockyard, I think, now. And we walked by a big, you know, fancy, cool new development, and you could see it was basically a room this large, and it had desks, you know, in rows that had 2 to 3 computer screens. And I told my kids, I said, do you want to work there 40 hours a week? That's what the New World Order wants for you. Like, doesn't that sound soul crushing? And that's actually the best of it. I mean, really, they just want you locked in your home or, you know, with VR goggles on or something. But all of those programs really are to bring about this 4IR transformation that is a satanic program to merge man and machine. Yeah, babe.
So a question, you know how Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and I was just saying, you know how Elon Musk has bought Twitter, and then he's got all these satellites up in the sky. What are your, is he, everybody thinks he's one of the good guys. Is he really one of the bad guys?
Yeah, I think you don't become a billionaire without being ruthless, right? You could maybe become a multimillionaire without being ruthless. You could do that in a sort of honest way. I guess I'm not anywhere close to that. But I don't think it's possible to become a billionaire without being ruthless. And you can look at his, I mean, he's got all sorts of investments in these high-tech 4IR companies. His brother, I think, is doing a lot of damage in Australia, you know, bringing about the 4IR and the Surveillance Society in Melbourne, Australia, which is the most livable city in the world. And Oklahoma City is now one of the most livable cities. That's a buzzword. So I think anyone who's got a huge national following, you should be suspicious of them, because our media is so controlled. How? Through the colleges and universities that train journalists and talk to them about creating an impact. You can look it up, solutions journalism. It's about writing fluff articles like this propaganda. It's all the same stuff, right? Actually, I think the AI writes it. So if you have a national, international media presence in that environment, I would say you're probably in on it or benefiting from it in some way. You know, I tend to think if you're a billionaire or if you've got a large media presence, you should not be trusted.
As a student of the Constitution these days, one of the big things I've noticed is the eroding of our liberties, the usurpation of government reaching into every aspect of our lives, which is exactly what you're talking about here in these 15-minute cities. We had a discussion recently in one of our classes of a student in OU, and his professor was talking about had socialism been more prominent during the Great Depression, the poor would have been better off over them. Mm-hmm. And it led to a little bit longer discussion, but the big point there is most people now don't recognize socialism versus free enterprise capitalism, because they keep promoting that how capitalism is bad. And because of all the regulation that we now have, it's a blend of free capitalism and socialism, so it is bad.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
But when they call that capitalism and how much better socialism is, it pushes everybody to think, man, we need to go to socialism because look how bad capitalism has been. Well, we're actually already in socialism, where we need to get out of it and go back to free enterprise capitalism. But because of all these programs, they're already manipulated that into a different direction.
Yeah, this is, and I should wrap it up because it is late, and you all have been such a kind audience. You know, there's a technical term for this communist capitalist blend that we have here, and that is communitarianism. And there is a whole series of writings on it, and it looks very nice. Again, it talks about the common good and balancing individual rights against the needs of the community. And Amitai Etzioni, who I like to mention him, I happened upon his work from the late Nikki Rapana, who wrote a lot about communitarianism. So she turned me on to him, and he advised every major U.S. president since Jimmy Carter. Amitai Etzioni is the father of communitarianism, and he has a book called Reinventing American Society. And it's all about this balancing. And there's the economic analog that is about needing to move capitalism toward true value creation. So I look at a lot of business roundtable documents, and you're right. I mean, they want to keep promoting the idea that we're in a capitalist society because they know that that is appealing to the American public. So it's all about manipulating the terms for propaganda purposes. But you're right. We've got something that is not free enterprise. It's definitely regulated. It's all subsidized. It's very convoluted. The policy, I mean, the legislation is thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of pages. So we don't have free enterprise here right now, but it's going to get a lot worse. You know, so what China has, you know, people say, oh, well, it's sort of free market communism. Well, they were the pilot project for us. You know, we're sort of the last place in the world we're going to be the hardest, I don't know, sometimes. Like maybe, I think small town America is our only hope because the larger cities, mid-sized cities like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, I've just sort of given up on. But I'll go to lots of little towns because I think you've got the heart and soul to understand it, and you also have the skills and the knowledge to provide for yourselves during the fight. And you know, I'm 42. I have never grown my own food, and I didn't. I mean, I kind of thought it was a problem. I remember thinking as a little kid, I wouldn't know how to feed myself if we didn't have a grocery store. But now, at 42, I think I really wish that I'd learned that. And our society is totally upside down. But maybe in the small towns, it's not as upside down. So I would say, create partnerships or coalitions between small towns and cities, because there are lots of us in the cities that are having a big shock and we want to fight and we don't exactly know how, but we can do things like what I do, you know. I can talk about George Kaiser, I can go to different places. So we're going to have to make those sort of, you know, coalitions, and you know, you're going to have Attorney Hicks speak about McGirt. I would say if we can develop coalitions with the tribes, because the tribes are going to get really hurt by McGirt. What the federal government's going to do is put a conservation easement all over the whole reservation. They're going to lose their land, just like they're taking, you know, state of Oklahoma land and making it reservation land. And it's a divide and conquer. So if we can form a coalition with the people of the tribes, not the leadership, they're all corrupt, you know, cross some of these boundaries ourselves, then we might be able to buy ourselves some time.
And a lot of it, I think, like you're saying, is we got to get back and know what our liberties are, where the rights come from, understand the limitations of government, and start fighting to put that back in place.
Yeah, and just learn the propaganda. I mean, the basic thing, learn the top 10 and then say, wait. So thank you all so much. Let me hand this back over to Carrie and